In this video, we are checking out the Golden Demon Painting Awards of 1988. Snakeworks! Greetings, Golden Demon and miniature painting fans. My name's Marcel, and this is Snakeworks Studio, where it's our mission to help you there, you can see my filthy nail, I do apologise, I'll help you there explore the hobby. So, Golden Demon 1988. The Golden Demon 1988 awards were the second awards of Golden Demon. Of course they would be, wouldn't they? The first ones, obviously, keep saying, ow! The first Golden Demon Awards were in 1987. So the following year, we had a bigger, badder, better Golden Demon. Now, sadly, I never went to Golden Demon 1988 or 87 for that matter, as I would have been 6 and 7 years old. 6 or 7 years old, depending on the exact date. I think it was in July. I may be wrong, but I would have been 6 or 7. Anyway, that's far too young to be entering Golden Demon. I probably had no idea about the world of Warhammer at that time anyway. I don't even think they had a Young Bloods category back then. And obviously after 1988, they went on to have many more Golden Demons right up to this day, where it's still going and is still regarded as one of the greatest celebrations of miniature painting in the world. And I can't believe I managed to say all that without cocking up. Now, I said I didn't enter 1988, and I have to admit I've not entered ever. One day I shall hope to rectify that, although my painting is nowhere near as good as it needs to be, but we can at least say we entered for the experience. It's all about taking part, isn't it? You can get some finalist pins, they look quite nice. A friend of mine had one of those once. Can't speak today. A friend of mine had one of those once. Hello, Will, if you're watching. I remember your commissar. Anyway, this is quite a long video, so you might want to make a cup of tea or something and get some food or some snacks on the go. So without further ado, let's jump in and have a goosey. It's the summer of 1988, and the day after my 7th birthday, one of the best Christmas movies ever was released. In the summer. Die Hard, starring Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. And if anyone tries to tell you it's not a Christmas movie, ignore them. They are fools. Die Hard is a movie that would go on to spawn numerous sequels and spin-offs, such as games and more games. I myself wasn't at the cinema. I was in the bus queue waiting to be picked up to go to middle school. And the talk of the town was Kylie Minogue. We were all doing the locomotion, and if you like to say otherwise, I name you liar. Kylie was a big deal back then. A big deal like Golden Demon. This video is a tribute to the skill and dedication of the entrants to the 1988 Golden Demon Awards, the second National Figure Painting Championships. It was made possible by the efforts of all the previously unknown figure painters whose exquisite work graces the following video. In the last few years of the 1980s, the painting of Citadel miniatures developed into a subculture of their own within the gaming world, and the standard of work has reached almost unbelievable heights. This growing hobby requires extreme patience, a steady hand, an eye, preferably two, for colour, and a dogged determination seldom found elsewhere. The Golden Demon Awards were conceived as the quest for perfection in the hobby of Citadel miniature painting, the search for the ultimate figure painter. By late 1986, it was obvious that Games Workshop would never achieve this objective through the medium of subsidiary painting competitions staged at sundry conventions. The time was ripe for the first national Citadel miniatures painting competition. So successful was the first event in 1987, the quality of entries exceeded everybody's wildest hopes. We can only cover a small selection of the very best entries for Golden Demon 1988, but the following video is a glowing accolade to the inspiration and talent of all those who qualified for the grand final. Hours, if not days, of patient yet eminently satisfying work have gone into each piece, and each deserves careful study and appreciation. The standard of painting for Golden Demon 1988 was exceptional, dare I say better than 1987. And the final decision as to who was the overall show winner was a painful one. Only one thing is beyond dispute, that the Golden Demon Slayer sword, lovingly crafted by Raven Fantasy Armory, was hard won in a final which gave no easy decisions for the judges. By its very nature, the subject matter of this video dictates that it's 99% photographs. Words cannot describe what the eye can see at a glance. The miniatures here were painted by the elite of the hobby. The standard of photography is of course exemplary, as all the photographs were taken by the Games Workshop photographic crew, led by Phil Lewis. Phil swore to photograph every entry at the 1988 final, but I'm not sure, he may have missed just maybe one or two somewhere amidst the chaos. So as you view the following video, spare a thought for those whose work you're admiring. Somewhere out there, the lights burn late in the attic workshops and basement studios, as the determined devotees of the great art of Blanchitsu sharpen their brushes and prepare for the next great challenge. The Golden Demon Awards 1989. For Golden Demon 1988, the regional heats began early in the year, with full support in White Dwarf magazine. Thousands of figure painters flocked to their nearest regional centre to enter their prize exhibits in this important event. Only 3 entrants from each heat would qualify for the title of Master Painter, earning the right to fight it out with Britain's best at the grand final in Nottingham, and perhaps even win the coveted Golden Demon Slayer sword. Like the quest for the Holy Grail, the Golden Demon Awards brook no compromise in the relentless pursuit of perfection. There are no exceptions for age, no category differentials for younger painters. The Golden Demon Awards are setting the standards for future excellence, and anything less will simply not suffice. But the competition does not just concentrate on expert painting. It also provides an opportunity to demonstrate exquisite modelling and conversion skills. As you can see in the following video, the results speak for themselves. The wealth of detail, the myriad colours and the flights of imagination leap from the screen in a celebration of excellence. It must be said that the standard of entry in 1988 was much higher than in 1987, and many exceptional entries were pipped at the post by others which just had an edge in terms of style, detail, effect, or pure imaginative quality. Those who missed out at the final need not be dismayed. The Golden Demon Awards are now firmly established as one of the most significant annual events of the gamers' calendar. Many thanks must go to all the independent retailers who took part as regional centres, enabling the event to be the marvellous success which we witnessed at the final. Many of these volunteers did not fully understand what they had let themselves in for, nor did they realise just how difficult it is to judge one finely painted Citadel miniature against another. Next year, in Golden Demon 1989, we will no doubt see more shops taking part in the regional heats, more entries at each shop, and an even more impressive display of Citadel and Iron Claw miniatures at the final. I rather think it's a pretty safe bet that they'll need a bigger haul in 1989. The Great day. Months of feverish preparation were over. It was too late to discover any mistakes now. The doors were about to open on the expectant queue waiting outside the Victoria Leisure Centre for the finals of the Golden Demon Awards 1988. Strangely quiet, the gaming tables and display stands in the main hall awaited their audience. The only sounds being the atmospheric background music and the clank of armour as the Knights of Oldhammer prepared themselves for the day's events. The last piece of artwork had been mounted on the display boards, the public address system tested, and the demonstration games set up. There was nothing left to do but wait for the doors to open. In the miniatures display room, Phil Lewis and his staff of expert photographers had been labouring valiantly since 8:30 in the morning to get the miniatures labelled, catalogued and on display in time for the grand opening. At 10 o'clock sharp, a swiftly growing stream of people began to pour through the doors. Within 20 minutes, the hall was filled with a throng of excited enthusiasts, and it soon became clear that the 1988 grand final of the Golden Demon Awards was going to be a very busy day. The games tables included Warhammer 40,000 demonstration competitions, a wonderful Blood Bowl arena, Warhammer fantasy roleplay and battle games, plus a massive pitched battle display between the armies of Slaanesh, Khorne and the Femir, featuring over 500 painted Citadel miniatures. The unofficial roleplay version of Warhammer 40k, run by Bob Avery, attracted a large crowd of spectators, as did the speed painting competition. This speed painting competition was a rather messy affair, but then, given that the entrants had only 15 minutes to produce a finished miniature, it was inevitable that some of the paint would miss its mark and end up all over the tables, not to mention the competitors. The White Dwarf and Games Workshop seminars were massively oversubscribed, the trade stand constantly besieged, and the Heavy Metal live stand constantly surrounded by a throng of boggle-eyed enthusiasts. At the Illuminations live display, the Games Workshop artists were all but swamped by a deluge of happy fans, all cheerfully demanding signed sketches from their heroes and admiring the works of Ian Miller, Pete Nifton, Gary Harrod, Tony Huff, Tony Ackland and others. Sweating under the weight of their armour, the Knights of Oldhammer held a series of extremely realistic medieval combats throughout the day. The ferocity with which they attacked each other, sending sparks flying from their clashing swords, was matched only by their skill, ensuring that no one suffered any injury worse than a bruise or two. The magical myth-lore monsters, in full costumes, spent most of the day distributing leaflets and programmes in the Nottingham city centre, surprising many a Saturday shopper. Yet all these exciting events were subsidiary to the miniatures themselves, and the quantity and quality of the entrants was almost worrying. Even with twice as many display cabinets as in 1987, they were none too sure that they would have enough space to display all the entries, particularly those on huge scenic bases. In the end, however, everything was fitted in, although Phil Lewis was hard-pressed to capture every entry on film. The display room was packed throughout the day. The finalists studied the competition closely, trying hard to maintain an air of quiet confidence. Other spectators showed no such nonchalance, loud exclamations of wonder, amazement and admiration being the order of the day. The climax of an extremely exciting day was the Golden Demon Awards ceremony at 5 o'clock, when everybody dropped what they were doing in order to watch the presentations and to discover who had won. The judging was a near impossible task, with so many entries all painted to a very high standard. After a couple of hours of careful deliberation, the judges, Brian Ansell and John Blanche, emerged with a list of winners. The results were announced and the prizes presented by Gary Chalk, who had spent the day demonstrating the art of building and converting model castles from the Citadel mighty fortress. There were mounted and engraved Golden Demon trophies for first, second and third places in each category, plus a t-shirt for those receiving an honourable mention. Finally, once the winners of each category had mounted the rostrum to collect their awards, the huge Golden Demon Slayer sword, specifically made for the occasion, was presented to the overall winner. And with that, the Golden Demon Awards 1988 were brought to a close. All that remained was the monumental task of clearing away the debris. The Entrants. Some of the faces may be the same, but the finalists for 1988 included a large proportion of previously unheard of miniature painters. Notice the new t-shirt for the regional winners. No one else will be able to obtain one. They are collector's items in their own right. The featured entrants of the single figures category. First up, in the single figures category is Priscilla Lewis with her what I believe to be an elf warrior. I do like the broken sword on the end of the spear shaft. Amusingly, it looks like the hand is still holding the hilt. I really like the skin tones on this miniature, and the eyes show serious focus. Next up, it's a Space Marine by John Lewis. This Space Marine hails from a chapter that I sadly cannot identify. There were loads of interesting schemes going around at this time. The Marines had probably only been out for around a year or so at this stage, so I doubt there were any trends going at the time. The freehand details, such as the chevrons on the legs, are very well defined. It's a very tidy miniature. A Samurai Warrior by Andy Thomas up next, and I have to say I don't remember any samurai figures in Warhammer Fantasy, so could this be from an alternate system? The detailed patterning on the arms is really something else. That must have taken a very steady hand indeed. I doubt Andy was drinking coffee when he painted those details. A Chaos Sorcerer up next by C. Swainstone. I think I've seen this miniature painted a few times over the years. The little figure on his spear shaft, or his wizard staff, reminds me of something I might see on an Eldar miniature. I'm getting some sort of gem or jade vibes from it. This might be one of the last entrants on an octagonal base. That's very interesting. Another Space Marine by Adrian Wild up next, and this one's armed with a power sword and bolt pistol. I have to say I quite like the subtle camouflage on this one. It's almost like a cracked lightning bolt type of effect. The blood on the sword is always a nice touch. Even back in the 80s they were adding blood for the blood god, although I imagine they used a different technique back then. A pair of happy drinking dwarves up next by M. Assel. It's amusing to me as this is the single figure miniatures category, yet this is definitely two people, or three miniatures if you count the owl. I assume it came packaged as one miniature. Rocky Paths by Ralph Horsley is up next, and this features an early Chaos Space Marine, known back then as a Renegade or Treacher Marine. This sculpt was named Three Eyes later on, I think. It's painted in a scheme that I don't think I've seen before. It's like a desert camouflage. It's quite nice. The little red plants add some nice little touches of colour to the base. I do like this one. A dwarf or some sort of Chaos Warrior up next by D. Kerry. This reminds me of one of the trolls or goblins in the Labyrinth movie that are featured towards the end in the battle scene. His helmet is very round, although I'm not sure what is going on with the base. It's a strange shape. It might be made from a piece of slate chipping, you know, the stuff you see on driveways. The little blue mushrooms on it are great, and I love seeing little mushrooms on bases. I have no idea why. A Dwarf Warrior by J. Strong up next, and at first glance, it looked to me like he was standing next to a five-a-side football goal. On closer inspection, I don't think it is. However, I still can't make out what it actually is. Does anyone have any ideas? The white armour is very nice, and you don't see many white armoured dwarves. Another dwarf up next, this time by W. Jones. He's striking a victorious pose, and I assume he's just won the battle. Although the expression on his face makes it look like he's not all that impressed with something. Maybe he feels he had to win the battle single-handedly. An early squat miniature up next, painted by P. Clark. I love the reflection effect on his sunglasses, and I do miss sunglasses on miniatures. Some people used to think that he was holding a ghetto blaster. Do they still call them that? A boombox maybe? He does also have a lot of pouches around his waist. Maybe he's carrying a lot of music cassettes. An ogre of sorts by David Jackson up next. He has a sword like the current Primaris Judicar has, with the flat tip. And that's interesting, as until the Judicar I had never seen a sword like it. I guess there's some sort of historical background there. This miniature appears to show the moment just after he's beheaded someone. The blood is still on the sword. Very grisly. This is a nice one. An elf warrior, of the dark variety perhaps, by Craig Pay. The colours on this one look really nice to my eye. Maybe it's just because it's blue. The red banner in the background works very well. Also, look, it's a mushroom on the base. Red and green this time. Terrific. An Eldar by Stephen Jones up next. Interestingly, he's painted in a scheme which doesn't look a million miles away from today's Alatox scheme. I love those flames on his helmet. They are very clean. The base is a little strange. Strange, but good. Are they supposed to be rocks or some sort of fungus? Another Eldar now, this time painted by Tim Beresford. I don't recognise the green and red scheme. That's a new one to me. Can anyone name this craft world? Or was it a one-off for this piece? This one has a really nice base. The rocks are nicely defined, and again we have some fungi, a blue toadstool and some red puffballs. I haven't seen a puffball in years. A Blood Bowl cheerleader by Andrew Craig. I do enjoy the base on this one. It reminds me of the cake scene in the movie Under Siege with Steven Seagal. The little details are quite nicely painted, and I think it's an elf. It can be hard to tell on these old miniatures sometimes. A Dwarf Slayer up next by R. Bancroft. The name of the piece appears to be Charge. A fitting name for a wonderful miniature. I do like the mohawk and nose ring combination. Very punky. And look, a mushroom. Glorious. Some non-metallic metal effects up next. Who knew they were at it way back when? This time it's a Lamenter's Space Marine in Mark 6 armour, painted by Callum MacDonald. I like the way he's achieved a nice solid yellow. I can imagine it was quite difficult with the paint and equipment they had at the time. He's done a cracking job. Sadly, there's no mushroom on the base though. The featured entrants of the mounted figures category. Do you remember when Space Marines had access to hang gliders? Hugh Fottrell does with his 7-Up sponsored hang gliding Marine. This is a perfect example of the craziness from early Rogue Trader. Check out those what I assume to be weapons. This thing is a beast, and we need an updated version. This is cute. Next up is either a big knight or small dragon pairing by Nick Eggleston. I do like the pink, blue and white barber pole. It reminds me of Baskin-Robbins ice cream. Damn, now I want an ice cream. The base is interesting. I'm not sure what that's made of. It might be one of those plaster relief things. Jay Blakely up next with some Legion of the Damned. This one is mounted on an early Space Marine jet cycle. These were the ones with no handlebars. Very weird. Very weird indeed. The head looks like it's from the skeleton kits of the time. He appears to be having a wonderful time. I do like the flame effects going on there. The Legion of the Damned really are a nice scheme, and I have to admit I'm surprised we don't see more of them. A frog being ridden by a Gretchen or Grot up next by Callum MacDonald. This thing looks quite small, and it's hard to make out just what's going on. I think the frog has a handmade collar, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, the back leg arrangement looks very strange. I think I need some more pictures of this miniature. Jonathan Welfare up next with his goblin on an eagle? It has a lot of tassels hanging down. It reminds me of a cowboy jacket or something. It's not something I can say I've seen since on a miniature. The base is really nice. I like the contrast. Extra points for the mushrooms. Neil Parsons mounted knight up next, and this one is on a sizable base. There's a lot going on here. The knight is a nice clean white with a hard to make out red heart on his shield. It does look like a good miniature. The rat on the base is amusing, however I'm not sure what the egg looking thing is. Is it a plant? M. Bryant's mounted elf up next, and I think this one is a sorceress or mage of sorts. I do like the globe it's holding. Wait, you forgot your globe! The spikes on the base look like they might be meant to be mushrooms, but this time I'm not convinced. Sorry, Mr. Bryant. Is this a Lord of the Rings miniature up next? I remember Games Workshop and Citadel doing some Lord of the Rings figures way back when. It looks like it's a Hobbit on Bill the Pony. This piece is by Gary Querns. I might be wrong, it might not be a Hobbit, but the clothes, dagger and bare feet look like big clues to me. What do you guys think? This one also has a very nice base, and I like how it's not taking up all of the plinth. G. Appley up next with an elf riding a horse. He has a wonderful shield and lance combination. I do like the design though on that shield. Is there a proper term for shield designs? This one is a snake and it's very nice. What on earth is going on here? It's a Thug Life turtle with his mate, the Grim Reaper. This time by A. Lanyon. It's an interesting take on a mounted figure, that's for sure, and I do not recognise either sculpt. Are they from Warhammer Fantasy? Are they from a random board game? Nobody knows. Actually, I bet a few people know, and hopefully they will chime in and let us know in the comments. This one is fantastic. This one's probably my favourite so far in the mounted category. It's an orc riding a chocobo by the looks of it, by Gary Pritchard. I did have to laugh as my autocorrect changed chocobo to chocoholic. Do chocobos eat chocolate? Also, this is a blue chocobo. I remembered the coloured ones in Final Fantasy had special skills. Could it run over mountains or could it run over water? I don't remember. The colours really do stand out nicely, and of course, extra points for the mushroom hidden away at the back there. Good stuff, Mr. Pritchard. The featured entrants of the Dragons category. The first dragon we are going to take a peek at is by Chris Wright, and I'm sure this is a man that used to make Commodore C64 soundtracks. Perhaps that was Tim Wright. Anyway, this dragon has 2 heads, and I can relate. I've met quite a few two-faced dragons over the years. This one has an interesting double banner of sorts. Bad for good and the original sin. Now that sounds like a metal song. I do like how all the scales on the dragon's hide have been picked out. The base also has a lot of interesting foliage. Marvellous. John Tam's up next with a dragon that appears to be dancing or prancing down the alley between the ruins. It needs some sort of song playing with it. I'm Too Sexy by Wright, said Fred perhaps. Does anyone else have any better suggestions? This base must be quite big, as to get a good look, the cameraman, Phil Lewis I believe, has had to get well above the miniature. From there we can see the dragon's prey, a poor sap who has been killed by the dragon and dropped his gear. Unlucky my man. Another of the 2-headed dragons up next, and this time it's by Mark Evans. I do enjoy the way that this dragon's heads are painted in different colours. Perhaps each head fires a different elemental breath. Now, did that happen in the Super Nintendo version of Zelda? That does seem to ring a bell. My word, that was a great game, and that's another one on the list to revisit. Mark has added some nice water effects to his base, some sort of lake or pool. I am intrigued as to how or what they used for water effects back in the 1980s. This one looks quite small, a dragon on a pillar or column by Gary Querns. Interestingly to me, the dragon doesn't stand out much and the pillar appears to be the main focal point. The pillar is painted very well though. I think the foliage on the base is that lichen stuff. You can still get it today. I used it on my Elysian drop troops, another project that still needs finishing. This one is very interesting, a piece by S. Mussered. It looks like some goblins are either breeding or murdering some newly hatched dragons. The shells do look like eggs to me. It's either that or the dragon just happens to be there and the shells are scenery. Sometimes it can be quite hard to tell with these old creations. Whatever the intention is, it does look very nice. This one is fantastic. It looks huge. It's by Craig Sparks. Look at the size of the rock it's sitting on. Surely he can't have used a real garden rock for that. It would have weighed a ton. I'm going to guess it was expanded foam in a bag or balloon or something. I've no idea. If anyone does know, then please let us know. I do like the basing on this dragon. The grass terrain and rocks work perfectly together, and there's lots of interesting details such as skeletons milling around the place, and my favourite, all those red mushrooms. Extra points for those. The dragon itself looks to me like it's almost made of rock. The grey underside gives me a very stony vibe. It looks a bit like a helmet where the grey has flowed over onto its head. A very odd posed dragon next by Jackie Ashmore. Funnily enough, I'm pretty sure this is the pose out of the box. I don't think this is a conversion. The dragon looks like it's bending his or her back in a very painful manner. It's not something I would recommend trying yourself. It's your typical red dragon, and I think red must have been a very popular dragon colour. Was Smaug from The Hobbit described as red in the book, or was he just assumed to be red? If this is the case, then it might be why. I really like this next dragon, a long, sinuous, now that's a word I've not used in a long time, a long time, sinuous dragon by Sean Grant. I like the yellowy, almost ochre hide on this one, and the dragon's been posed in a manner where it looks like it's about to just leap after its prey, or it's recently been disturbed by a photographer. There's some more mushrooms on the base, and some more of that lichen. The dragon is mounted on a jagged plinth, which reminds me of the bases for the latest Space Hulk Terminators, and I say latest, but that was a few years ago now. Look out, another two-headed dragon, and this appears to have been a very popular miniature this year. I wonder how long the dragon category stuck around. Anyway, this one is painted by M. Smith. It doesn't have a base, which is different to all the other dragons we've seen so far. I wonder if Mr. Smith liked to use it for gaming too. Intriguing. Okay, this is getting silly now. It's the two-headed dragon again. At least it's painted a different colour this time. This one is painted by S. Kennedy. Now, there's always been a trend of the newest miniatures being used in Golden Demon entries. I do wonder if this was the case back in the 1980s. Was this dragon the latest big release? I never really enjoyed the way it's the same new miniature over and over. When the competition is saturated with the same miniature, it gets boring and less interesting. Oh, and the mushroom is pretty big on this base. It almost looks like a real mushroom that's been stuck on. This one is very different. I really like it. Sorcerer is the name of the piece, and it's painted by Chris Clayton. There's some great use of a chain and a big dead head. I like the way it looks like Chris has used a plastic pipe to portray the spinal column. Fantastic. There's some stringy, snotty, goopy effects also going on. I wonder what he used to do that. This dragon is painted in a much more darker, subdued scheme than most of the others we've seen, and I think that's what makes it stand out to me. Next up is a dragon by L. Dudley, and I have to keep checking my source images as this dragon looks a lot like the one with the two heads, but it is slightly different. I need to know if it's a conversion or an alternate sculpt. Mr. Dudley, if you're out there, what is this? The horns on the head remind me of the Terror Dog from Ghostbusters. I used to be scared of that as a youngster back in the 80s. Then again, I suppose that was the point. The base on this dragon is sadly curling up a bit at the ends. I wonder what it's made of. This one appears to be ridden by an elf assassin with a huge banner. That mask isn't hiding anyone's identity, is it? Oh, there's Dave. I can see his banner a mile away. Another ghetto blaster on a miniature. This one is by Adrian Blakeman. I like that hat he's wearing. It almost looks like it has a felty texture. It might even be felt. Oh, and those dreadlocks. Superb. Very different and very cool. It's our first golden dragon, and I can't say I've seen many golden dragons. And I mean in a miniature sense, not in real life. I haven't seen any dragons there. Well, you know. Okay, hopefully this is the last one. Another two-headed dragon. I don't think I ever want to see this miniature again after this. This time it's painted by Steve Bell. To be fair, Steve has done a cracking job painting this dragon. The scales almost look like individual gems or something. The base is also very well done. Lots of height and lots of variety in foliage and terrain. Very nice. Well done, Steve. This next dragon, by G. Pritchard, might be the most colourful miniature I've ever seen. Just look at all those colours. The wings are full of colour, and it even has a huge, bright, colourful banner. There also looks to be a Judge Dredd Lawmaster bike on the base. Is Lawmaster the correct name? I have forgotten. The tower is also riddled with colour, and of course there's some nicely colourful mushrooms all dotted about. Due to the size of the piece and all the colour, it can be hard to make out the actual dragon itself. It's not the most readable image. On closer inspection, I think I recognise that dragon. Oh, for fuck. Chris Clayton up next with another back-bending dragon. This time it's painted in a nice pastel pink. I also have a thing for pink. I think it's an awesome colour. I do like the way the wings go from an almost magenta, blended down to, or should I say up, to white. The base is also very fitting, and if you look closely, I think it's a wooden trunk with a face carved into it. It's very atmospheric. Also, there's some more mushrooms and some more lichen, so that's a big thumbs up from me. The fact that it's not one of those two-headed dragon miniatures bumps it up the leaderboard too. Well done, Chris. The featured entrance of the monsters category. This should be a good one. Fan favourite Fraser Gray is up first with this huge construction. It's some dinosaur lookalikes with an orcish hut contraption built on top. It's incredible. There's lots of fun details, such as chains, shields, banners, and of course, mushrooms involved. The name of this piece is Chaos Destructor, so I guess it's not actually for orcs, is it? My mistake. I love the way the title of the piece is on a little curled up banners. I think that's really nice. Keith James is up next with what I think is an ogre. Now I can imagine there's a few experts at home watching this video shouting as I name factions or miniatures incorrectly. I do apologise, these old fantasy miniatures are a little out of my expertise. So anyway, this ogre has a lovely haircut, and I'm used to seeing them looking a bit baldy. There's no blood on the sword this time, and that is surprising. A Minotaur by Callum MacDonald up next, and it would appear that Callum has entered quite a few miniatures into Golden Demon 1988. There's a lot of contrast on the skin of this beast, from black all the way up to almost white. It's very pleasing to my eye. Again, there's a bladed weapon, but this time there's some blood. Lovely. D. Webb has entered an Amble. The Amble was a weird 40k monster that has actually recently been re-released, and redesigned I should add. It was part of the Blackstone Fortress expansions. Has it gone out of production again? I don't know. D-Web has painted this in what we would refer to as a box art method, basically where they paint it like the studio versions. I always liked the Amble. It's really funky. It looks like a tree man crossed with an ant. Another ogre up next, painted by S. Willis. What are you talking about, Willis? That would have been the 80s. 10 internet cookies if you're old enough to understand that reference. I've seen this miniature painted a few times over the years. It appears to paint up well, and S. Willis has also done a very good job with it. I love the orange gurning face on his belly plate. Is that the proper term, belly plate? A femur or femur or thymere up next, the world's most contested pronunciation of a miniature. This one is painted by D. Kerry. I never imagined them as purple beasts. They were always green in my head, but it's always nice to see a different take. Word on the street is that there was some femur or femur in Hero Quest, but I never had that game. I feel I might have missed out. The femur is on a relatively big base. Luckily, it's covered in colourful mushrooms. The best Greater Demon up next, A Keeper of Secrets by Mark Assel. Slaanesh's favourite. I love these old keepers, they were proper weird. I was given one once, but it seemed far too small. I had no idea why, until I found out a few years later it was the epic version. It was tiny. Tiny, but ace. I like all the blue tattoos on the skin. It reminds me a bit of Ali Morrison's work. A tiny monster on a big head up next by S. Masared. The little monster reminds me of one of the Familiars you used to get. I loved the Familiars miniatures. So characterful. This one appears to be claiming the kill of a dragon. I'm not sure I believe it. See Swainstone up next with a Zote, and amusingly my script autocorrect is back at it again, this time turning Zote into Goat. Interesting. We know it's a Zote as Chris has written it on the side of the base, along with another word that I can't make out. B-O-E-D? Bode? What does that say? This Zote is all green. Normally I see a few more colours on my Zotes, but not this time, no. Fade to Black, a Minotaur and banner by P. Roberts. The freehand on that banner is really very well done. Kudos for that. I'm not sure what the little item on the bottom right is though on the base. It looks like a pencil in a sharpener. I really need to get my eyes tested. This is very good, isn't it? A little Balrog painting a Legion of the Damned Space Marine by A. Hopwood. The art on that might be some of the best I've ever seen. It looks really clean and professional, almost like computer art. It would be great to get a better look at this miniature. Also, those little paint buckets are a tasty touch. I think this next one is a Lord of the Rings Balrog by Rupert Gibson, from the Bridge of Khazad-dûm Lord of the Rings set. Either that, or it could be a generic Khorne Greater Demon. Those things were pretty much the same thing anyway. I love the cliff, the way it juts out with the stalactites or stalagmites. It looks like the beak of an alligator. I'm not sure that beak is the right word. The featured entrance of the Dark Future Cars category, and I've been looking forward to this one. Dark Future holds a special place in my heart. Why did you bin it off, Games Workshop? Why? Okay, so the first car is from Brian Biddle. This is an awesome little wagon. I like the police style mesh on the front window and the World War I looking machine gun on the front wing. Lovely. Again, it's a blue miniature, so I'm probably going to like it anyway. The red flame effect is a lovely touch. Up next, we have a car that reminds me of the SPV, I think it's called, the Special Pursuit Vehicle, from Captain Scarlet by D. Webb. It might be a conversion of the Renegade car from the Dark Future boxed set, but I can't actually tell. All the gubbins on the top of the car reminds me of the stuff on top of the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. Smashing stuff. This one's weird. A hot roddy thing by P. Armstrong. They look like literal knife or scalpel blades stuck on the sides. I'm not sure picking this one up would be entirely safe. Free blood effects for the entrant though. The military-esque decal numbering looks great. J. Strong is up next with a car that reminds me of what I had in my head for the kids' car in The Stand novel by Stephen King. I read it a long time ago, so I might have got a few details wrong. It's a good book though. I heartily recommend it. M-O-O-N. That spells Dark Future. This is a nice one. It's a car with a Space Marine driver by Andrew Lloyd. Andrew Lloyd Webber? This one also has an epic flame effect on the bonnet. They call that the hood over in the US. Did you know that Space Marines drove cars? Maybe it's a cosplayer out and about on the streets. The next car is by M.R. Berry. I do like his initials. The base car appears to be a Ferrari. Those little vents and grilly things on the side are a dead giveaway. I do like the way the wheels have been covered. It gives it a futuristic look, which reminds me of the spinners from Blade Runner. Not as many weapons on this one. The rear-facing turret is snazzy. Sadly, it's based on a block of wood, and I can't say that I appreciate that. A hot rod here, and I think we refer to them as rat rods maybe? Sadly, the painter has not been identified, so if you know who painted this one, then please let us know in the comments. It reminds me of an upgunned Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That's a movie I have not seen in a very long time. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen the entire thing. It looks crap. Kevin Payne's Dark Future car up next, and this one looks like a much bigger scale than all the others. The figure standing next to it looks to be maybe a 1/35th scale? It's hard to tell. I like the way it looks like a moon or dune buggy. I do enjoy balloon tyres. I had tyres like that on my pickup truck back in the day until my other half of the time forced me to sell it. I'm not bitter, honest. Neil Taylor up next with a car I don't recognise. I'm sure there's some car experts out there watching though, so please let us all know. This one has a new vent of sorts stuck on the front and a spindly looking turret up on the top. That turret looks as fragile as the Mark I Rhino handrails. Don't get me started on those. Keith Arbor next. I really like this one. This piece is called the Black Widows. Interestingly, I think the base car of this one is one of the little miniature versions of the old Tamiya radio-controlled cars. It's a Thunder Dragon or something like that. Thundershot, maybe? Oh, Fire Dragon. That's the one. I had a friend once who had a whole wall of Tamiya RC cars when I was a lad. He must have been loaded. They were very expensive. Well, to me anyway. I like the little display base on this one. The road is simple but effective. And watch out for those police. The featured entrance of the single miniatures conversion category. The first conversion is by P. Harris, and it's a hang gliding goblin. It would seem that hang gliders were one of the in things of the late 1980s. Maybe it's inspired by the Ewok hang glider from Star Wars Return of the Jedi. It certainly reminds me of it. I like the big rock on the base, and it looks like it's made of that weird, furry, soft wood you sometimes see. I've no idea what it's called. David Chauvel up next with a 40k miniature conversion. The base miniature looks to be either a Space Marine or some sort of sci-fi character. His helmet reminds me of an American football helmet. Maybe it's from a Blood Bowl miniature of the time. There's a little blade sticking up out of the ground, so he needs to be careful where he steps. Another Tim Beresford entry up next. This time, it's a mutated Space Marine. Mutated or Chaos Space Marines always were popular in Golden Demon, and they still are today. He has what I think might be an Orc heavy plasma gun for an arm, and some lovely tentacles for a left arm. Oh, and we can't forget his hoof. It's very Death Guard. B. Moore up next with a miniature I sadly can't see very well, let alone identify. It looks like it might be a lion-headed chap, or maybe some sort of beast man. The little pile of skulls next to the pillar is nice, and is that another piece of wood painted to be a rock? I like this one, although I feel it's cheating. It's a mug of miniatures by Darren Webb. There's a lot more than one miniature in this conversion. Very naughty. It does look great though, and I'm tempted to do my own version of this. Andy Thomas has entered what I think is another Lord of the Rings Balrog miniature. I keep identifying these as Lord of the Rings Balrogs. I'm going to look rather stupid if I was wrong all this time. I do like the steps carved into the rock face on the base. It reminds me of the steps from Cirith Ungol. What was the name of those stairs in Lord of the Rings Return of the King? Stupid Hobbit has forgotten. A converted Space Marine up next by P. Armstrong. This may be based on one of the early Renegade Space Marines, perhaps? The man in the suit looks like Tom Selleck to me, and I think it's the moustache. Either Tom Selleck or Nigel Mansell. The dead heads strung at his waist look quite realistic to me. That's a bit scary. David Chauvel again with his second entry into this category. This time, it's a squat, riding a purple boar, holding a bolt gun upside down. That squat's having a lovely time. I actually really like this miniature. Those colours look really nice, and of course because it's blue with some purple. I love the way David has used a dead sea urchin as a red mushroom. Very clever. Mick Beard up next with a bearded monster? Which is its real head? Or actually, does it have two heads? I do like the mace he's holding, but sadly I can't make out the left arm arrangement. Is that a hand? Is that a tentacle? Only Mick Beard knows. Or the people who saw it in the flesh with a better angle. This is a funky conversion. It's an ant-looking thing by L. Rothery. The arrangement of its limbs remind me of the bugs from the movie Starship Troopers. Now that's a good movie, probably a little dated now, but good fun nonetheless. I do not recognise a single part of this miniature. The legs look a lot like tarantula legs, and I should know because I own one. Well, it's my other halves really. Say hello, Dutch. Chris Clayton up next with a very nice miniature. It's a demony looking monster on top of a big dead head. I love the pinky tone of the lips and nose on the dead head. Is it recently deceased? The demon itself looks like the main character from the Super Nintendo Demon's Crest game. What is it with Super Nintendo references today? Did anyone ever play that game? I think it was a bit like Metroid. David Jackson up next with what looks to be a dark elf with his motorcycle. I do like this bike sculpt. Is it a Judge Dredd one again? The sign on the base is pointing to nowhere, and I think that's one of the locations mentioned in the early Rogue Trader publications. It might have even been in the main rules book. It's that bike again! This time it's Street Hawk by Stephen Joyce. I wonder if he was inspired by Street Hawk, that TV show where a guy had a bike that could go 300 miles an hour. When I was young, Street Hawk looked absolutely amazing. We thought it was really cool. Now it looks a little derpy. This bike is very colourful and it almost makes my eyes bleed. Additionally, is this the best base ever? It has a skeleton throwing up. It's disgusting and I like it. A Space Marine conversion up next by Kevin Atkins. His tripod legs look like they are made from hoovers. Maybe his mates call him Henry. Get it? I'll get my coat. His face has a bolter sticking out of it, and that's something I can't say I've seen done before or since. Unless you count the epic Chaos Titans, I think some of those had guns for faces. It's very thematic, and I actually really like it. It's got that weird look that sums up Rogue Trader, which I really feel 40k lacks these days. Aha! I know what miniature this conversion is based on. It's a Blood Bowl cheerleader by Simon Bargery. Converted to look like an Eldar standard bearer, I think. I've never seen an Eldar in a leather jacket before. It looks like Michael Jackson's jacket from the Beat It video. The freehand wolf on the banner is quite well done. I think he's done a great job. The featured entrance of the standard bearers category. Nick Turner is first out of the gate with his Orc standard bearer. I can just about make out the word blood on the banner. There's also a red thing, but I can't tell what it is. I do like the skull being used as the part on the top of the pole. I don't know what they're called. Is it called a boss? Scott Hyton next with his Mentor Legion Space Marine. I love the old Mentor Legion, so it's nice to see a standard bearer version of one. The owl head was always cool. Why on earth did they change it to a generic raptor head? They make some bad decisions sometimes, but I guess that's subjective. An Eldar standard bearer up next by Kevin Atkins. Thinking about it, I don't think Eldar use standards anymore, do they? I feel standards and banners were one of the alluring features of all the Warhammer games in general back in the day. I'm not sure why they phased them out. They need a return. The Eldar's Shuriken catapult has a chain blade attachment, and that's great. This one up next might be my favourite. It's a Crimson Fist by Kevin Plumley. The Crimson Fist chapter logo on that banner is really well done. The weathering is also very good. There's loads of bits of debris on the base. They all combine to make a busy but readable miniature. I think it's really good. A Zote up next by Jay Blakely, and I never knew Zotes used banners, but when they do, they look great. I can't make out the design on the banner, but it looks to maybe be some sort of space scene, or a load of eggs or something on a black background. I'm not sure. Haha, yes! I love this banner. This one is by Lee Dudley. Look at the eyes on this one. It reminds me again of the Terror Dog from Ghostbusters. There's a few gore and blood effects going on with the main miniature as well, and I like them. I can't stop staring at those eyes. Epic. Pete Hill up next with his... What on earth is that? Is it an orc? Is it a Vermeer? What is that? The banner looks very orky, and I'm pretty sure that's an orc's head on it. The head's painted in the best orc skin tone. It's a light green. So much more interesting than the dark green they use these days, but this again is my opinion, of course. Also, check out those acid faces, and didn't they start becoming a thing in the 90s? A big mushroom up next by Chris Clayton. We've seen a few of this guy's pieces now. I love the way the banner is a head hanging off what look like springs. Is it a decorative head or a grisly trophy? What do you all think? Also, the little Gretchen on the top is brilliant. Were they called snotlings? An alien set fire to his own head with a match up next by Chris Wright. Well, that's what it looks like to me. The banner pole looks to be made from an actual stick, which is new to me. It must be quite large, as it's mounted on a keeper of secrets. Did I ever mention Slanesh Greater Demons were the best? Whoa, check this out. An Eldar Dreadnought banner bearer by Robert Ward. I love those snake heads. Actually, they might be dragons, thinking about it. Of course it's blue, so I'm going to like it, but look at the face on that Dreadnought head. It looks so happy to be there. It's laughing about your impending doom. You would see it coming though, wouldn't you? That banner is huge. The featured entrance of the 40k Vignettes category. Vignettes, that's a funny word. I can't actually be sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. I think we refer to them as dioramas these days. Vignette number 1 is this epic weapons platform by Chris Swainstone. This gun is a beast. It looks a little like the new Primaris Space Marines weapons turret, and I have no idea what the name of that is. This one looks a lot better though. The actual guns on it look like anti-aircraft guns, sort of like an Imperial Guard Hydra. And are those images on the front shield decals or freehand? When your crack missile just isn't up to snuff, we have Nukem by Craig Sparks. Now, I'm not sure I recognise this weapon being carried here. If I was a betting man, I would have to wager that it's not a standard Space Marine kit part. It looks like a German V2 rocket, and I hope that thing's got suspensors. It looks very heavy. Also, it appears when it fires that it will actually drag the Marine along with it. He's attached by a wire. Amazing stuff. Next up is a vignette or diorama that screams Space Hulk or Aliens to me by Peter Cook. Peter has nailed that cramped, confined atmosphere that invokes dread and fear. Sort of like the fear of opening up an electric bill. Very scary indeed. I love the way all the detail is scratch built. Can you spot the straws? They were made of plastic back then, by the way. Next up is a diorama or vignette by Mark Evans. It appears to depict a lone squat hiding from an early Eldar Warwalker while trying to call for aid perhaps, or trying to sneak a few more goes in on Super Mario Land. Man, I miss Game Boys. The cardboard of the corrugated variety really does look like corrugated metal. Good work, Mark. Now, I'm not convinced I would call this next one a vignette myself. It's an Eldar War Robot by Kevin Atkins, and I never understood the difference between the different Eldar War Robots and Dreadnoughts. Apart from the obvious aesthetics, such as the head, does anyone out there know? It's a nice shade of yellow, to be fair. P. Bez up next. Bez from the Happy Mondays? With a pair of Marines taking on the might of the dreaded Amble. The Marines are from an unidentified chapter. It looks a bit like a crying eye, Sons of Horus maybe. I do enjoy the white Amble. I've not seen a white one before. It's very different. Our man David Soper up next. David has created a diorama of an Eldar Dreadnought laying the smackdown on an Orc Dreadnought. With both of those pieces being metal, I can imagine this was very heavy indeed. I can't name the craft world, but the little freehand skull on the Eldar Dread is fantastic. There's also some more freehand on that Orc Dreadnought banner. It looks like a lot of nice work. Good stuff, David. We will be watching your career with great interest. More Eldar up next, this time by Guy Carpenter. It's one of those robots along with a Warwalker. The Warwalker looks like it has a Millennium Falcon radar dish up on the top. Can anyone identify that part? The grey and yellow colours work very well together. It's a bit like the Red Scorpions, isn't it? A mass of tentacles that wouldn't be out of place in a Japanese anime up next. Not that I've ever seen any. The tentacles have caught something, and I think that something might be Space Marines. The tentacles are also painted in a way that suggests it might actually be some sort of carnivorous plant, as opposed to an animal. I love it. Be prepared to be blown away with this next entry. It's by Kevin Payne, and it's wonderful. That's a really old C100 series Space Marine sculpt, if I'm not mistaken, who has finally ridden himself of his dreaded nemesis. I love that hole in the wall and the smoking boots left behind. It's very 80s and it's very cool. Lots of colour up next. It appears to be the Astral Tigers or Astral Claws up next. I never could tell them apart. By Warren Jones. The scene appears to depict some jet bike riding Space Marines chasing down and perhaps destroying a runaway rogue dreadnought. I love the plasticine looking plants on the base. They remind me of things we used to make out of Fimo. Now, I'm going to assume John Tams has used a molt from his pet tarantula for this next piece as opposed to just sticking the tarantula down. A trick I've not seen repeated since. Now, I'm not a tarantula expert, but it does look a bit like an Arizona desert blonde. I have one myself. She's called Debbie, and she's tiny. If you want to know why she's called Debbie, Blondie, Debbie Harry, get it? Let's move on. This is made as a display piece vignette for the Space Marine Commander figure, who's usually depicted as an Ultramarine or Marneus Calgar. He also appears to take that seat everywhere with him. I really like this next one. It's a pair of Space Marines being confronted by a renegade or Treacher Marine. Well, one anyway. The other one's already dead or incapacitated by the looks of it. This piece is very simple, but it's very clear on what's taking place. I'm loving the paint scheme of that Treacher Marine. Dale Hurst is up next with what took me a little while to figure out. We can clearly see an Eldar Dreadnought being attacked by something. But what is the something? Well, it's an Imperial Guard Landspeeder, and those things didn't stick around long, did they? I think it's the angle that made it hard to identify. I love the plasma gun beam effects on this one. The Dreadnought doesn't look impressed.
You shot me.
The featured entrance of the Space Marine Squads category. Rupert Brahaney's Void Rats Space Marine Squad are up first. They will grieve for you appears to be the motto of the chapter, and grieve they shall. I like the light blue armour scheme of these Void Rats, and Rupert has done a nice job of giving each Marine a nameplate on their left arm pauldron. Has he filed the studs down to do that? If so, that's a lot of work. And that old missile launcher is so gnarly, it's epic. Hello, hello, hello? Is that a squad of Rainbow Warrior Space Marines up next? One of my favourite chapters. If you want to see some Rainbow Warriors painted really well, then I would suggest going to check out Louise Sugden's work on Instagram. It's immense. Her use of colour never fails to amaze me. Anyway, the Rainbow Warriors always had those nice helmet stripes and have an awesome winged lightning bolt for a chapter logo. Sadly, they seem to die off early on, and we don't see much of them over the years. But these ones were painted by Craig Sparks. Check out the size of those power fists. They are huge. I think back then they were known as Power Gloves. No, not the Nintendo version, that's something else. Peter Armstrong's Space Marine squad is up next, and I have to say, they remind me a little of the Thousand Suns. I think it's that glossy red with the exotic Eastern style logos and decorations. I think I can even make out a little M on one of the shoulder pads. There's some numbers on the bases well into the 40s, so I wonder if Peter had quite a few more of these hidden away at home. I do enjoy that long, thin banner. I might have to steal that. The Magnificent Seven, up next by Guy Carpenter. Now, I can't make out what chapter these are supposed to be. However, those jump packs might predate the official ones. Are these legitimate Citadel jump packs? I might need an expert in here for this. There's some more writing on the bases again, but this time sadly I can't quite make it out. I think it might be names. Grey Space Marines are very interesting, and I used to have some Space Sharks or Carcharodons back in the day, but sadly I found it a little boring painting grey over and over, so I gave up. The featured entrants of the Scratch-Built Vehicles category. The first entrance in the Scratch-Built Vehicle category is this Flyer by Kevin Atkins. The Flyer itself looks like something you might see in the Dune universe, which isn't really surprising considering Warhammer 40k is pretty much Dune with some extra aliens added in. I enjoy the way the main propulsion system appears to be a sail. Let's hope it's windy. Jonathan Welfare up next with his Walker. I'm sure this entry is built around a previously existing Walker kit, maybe something from Battletech? The guns on the front look a little bit like the Scout Walker or AT-ST guns from Star Wars. And I hope that squat puts his seatbelt on when he starts it up. This is nice, isn't it? It's an Orc vehicle by Ivan Bartlett. I cannot identify any of the base kits, but it looks to be like some sort of World War II era tank kits. Oh, with an extra steamroller. I love that steamroller. This thing must be rather big, as that Orc in the top hatch looks quite small in comparison. I really would like to see some more images of this piece. A hovercraft, I think, up next, by Simon Tift. This could be some sort of Imperial supply vehicle. Wasn't there a boat thing or something described in early 40k? Maybe I'm thinking of the Chimera. It's a long, slender ship, which looks a little like your typical canal or day boat. The ones near me don't have machine guns on though. Another long and slender vehicle up next by Ian Duthie. This one appears ready for winter combat. I do enjoy the winter camouflage on this one. The snow is also very well done. There's lots of melter guns on the top of this beast, and I love how it's up on those little ski legs. Is there a proper term for those? Just skids? Maybe? I don't know. I think this next one is an Orc fantasy vehicle by Sean Pictures. Perhaps it's a siege engine of some description with a lot of interesting decoration. The best bit is that Triceratops head. There are quite a lot of plastic dinosaurs being used back then. Larvy's vehicle up next. This one reminds me of Brum. I think it's that face on the front. Brum looked a little happier though, to be fair. All of the Orcs bundled into the back make it look like the Wacky Racers car with all the Mafia mobsters in. What was the name of that one? I do miss Wacky Racers. But which was best? Wacky Racers or Stop the Pigeon? This next one screams early 40k. This is what it's all about. This is the sort of weird and wonderful thing I like to see in my 40k universe. It's by Peter Brownhill. Pretty sure I recognise a roll-on deodorant stick on the top of this one. Oh, and a big Zoids part. They did like their Zoid parts almost as much as they liked their plastic dinosaurs. Santa Claus up next with his upgraded sleigh. Well, that's what it looks like. It is a little hard to make out. This is what appears to be another flyer this time by C. Slater. The front end reminds me of an A10 Warthog, and is that a huge rear-firing cannon or another sail mast? The Ultramarines have a new car. This one is by Mark Assel. I think it's an old dune buggy, Hot Wheels or Matchbox type car with a lot of add-ons. Caterpillar tracks, turrets, extra windows, it's fantastic. It looks like something that would have been entered in the Dark Future Cars category. I love all those different paint schemes. It's a mess, but a hot one. Yummy! The featured entrance of the Fantasy Vignettes category. It's that word again, and this time it's fantasy. Our first vignette is by Adam Achu. It features some orcs murdering a newly hatched dragon. I do feel sorry for it, and I hope its parents come back and seek revenge. And I love those gore effects. Why are these orcs after this dragon anyway? Do orcs eat dragons? Let us know in the comments. The next entry is by Daryl Kerry. Daryl's vignette features a trio of characters loitering around a stone pillar. What is the stone pillar? Is it chaotic? Is it an expensive artifact? Who knows? I can't actually figure out where the head of the left-hand character is. Is it some sort of sheep-headed creature? Why is that so hard to make out? There's some little mushrooms on the base though, so that's a big plus. David Chauvel is back, this time with a fantasy vignette. This is a big bush. The tree man on the left is barely readable. I think I can figure out the story here. The dwarf looks to the audience for forgiveness about what he's about to do. Kill the tree man for wood to heat his family. Even though there's wood everywhere. Andrew Walters is up next with something a little different. Here we can see an army of snotlings painting their own golden demon figure. Could you buy those little golden demon statues or something? How did he get hold of one of those? Or has Andrew sculpted it himself? A neat little touch is the larger chap on the right side directing the proceedings. Very characterful. Andy Thomas next with his vignette. This one depicts that ogre miniature, next to a rock either hanging out with or being attacked by snotlings. They really are quite tiny, and I think all these early snotlings might have even been metal. I'm not sure what the blue and white thing is though in the background. It might be a banner that's fallen down. This next one is quite amusing. It's a wizard about to have his head caved in by a rock by a troll. By A. Lanyon. To me it looks like the victim, as it were, is a wizard with a chainsword. I've never heard of such a miniature, but it sounds like the sort of miniature that I would like. There's definitely a wizard out there with a machine gun, but that's something else entirely. I love the rock with all the little coloured mushrooms growing out of those alcoves. It looks a bit like a mushroom display. I wonder if that's from IKEA. Mandy Wright's vignette is up next. This one, I believe, portrays a halfling having his portrait painted. Who knew halflings were so vain, let alone into portrait painting? Sadly, the artist hasn't started yet, so we don't get a good look at his quality. I want to see what he comes up with. Dominic Camus is up next with his vignette. This is very interesting, isn't it? It looks very sloppy. Sloppy in a good way. There's a lot of oozing, pussy, gory textures going on, and they look brilliant. I've a feeling the thing on the top is some sort of character sitting on a throne. My gut says Tzeentch sorcerer or demon, but I think this figure might predate the Chaos Gods, and I really like that eyeball. The next vignette is by A. Hopwood, and it's a hairdresser's or barber's. I've never seen a hairdresser in all my years of Warhammer. This piece is called Next, and it's brilliant. It would appear the orc with the big knives will be your barber for today. Some poor sap is being dragged in. That would have been me having my hair cut when I was 8 years old. I was scared shitless. I've no idea why. This is a nice little vignette up next by Simon Bargery. It looks to be a little demon or something, looking confused as to where his snotling mates are. I love how he's scratching his head in confusion. Poor little demon. The snotling with a spear has a worrying expression on his face. I wonder where he plans to stick that. My sincere apologies for interrupting your viewing pleasure, but if you're enjoying this video, please consider hitting that thumbs up button or maybe subscribing to the channel. That means you, James. I see you ignoring that button. Okay, so it's now the time for the winners. Judging 1988's event proved to be difficult as always. There were so many worthy entries, and as usual, the day passed too quickly. Immediate decisions were required from the judges. Games Workshop's managing director at the time, Brian Ansell, and art manager John Blanche. This may be no bad thing. A quick decision that a model looks right hits at the heart of what the hobby is all about: visual impact. There are, of course, always a number of different criteria in the judges' minds. Careful use of colours, blending and shading, decoration, fine detail, the suitability of the paint scheme, bases, balance, conversions, realism, and so on. When all is said and done, however, it is the combination of all these effects into a single strong image that makes an impression on the judges. For example, the 1987 overall winner, Brian Moore's Dragon, took the award for its overall qualities. Together, the simple but subtle conversion work, the realistic base, and the brilliance of the colour make that an extremely attractive winning model. So first up, we have the single miniatures category. The honourable mention went to Andy Portus with his C100 series Space Marine. It's a nice blue marine, which I'm going to assume is either an ultramarine or perhaps a Crimson Fist. The weapon is very strange. Is that an early bolter? We can see Andy has used that weird lichen stuff on the base. Does that ever rot? Next up, third place. Third place went to Neil Parsons with his undead character. The skeleton's armour reminds me of the Easterlings from Lord of the Rings. He has something in his right hand. It's either another globe or maybe he's just reaching out. There's a gravestone on the base. Do you think it's his? Second place went to Sean Grant with his Chaos Warrior. This one's very nice. I love the contrast on the armour. The shield has a really nicely painted dragon head on it. The base isn't over the top, but it's a style that I prefer myself. And first place went to David Soper with his Eldar Warrior. I love the clean red, blue and white scheme on this, but I couldn't tell you what the craft world is, but that's not important. This one also has a nice, clean, tidy base. Good stuff. Next up, the winners of the mounted figures category. The honourable mention went to Brian Moore with his Chocobo. Originally, I thought this miniature was a conversion, but that's two of these now in the same competition, therefore proving it's probably not. I do enjoy this miniature. I wonder what it actually was. The banner on this is nicely painted and the base has a lot of things going on, but it's not over the top. Very nice. Third place went to Stephen Massered with his mounted Chaos Warrior. I love this, but then again it's blue. There's loads of contrast on the miniature, both on the warrior and on his mighty steed. The base has some interesting lines in the grass. I'm not sure what that is, but it's a feast for the eyes nonetheless. Second place went to Dale Hurst with his Dark Angel Space Marine on bike. This could almost have been entered into the standard bearer category. I really enjoy the black to red gradient on this. The old Space Marine bike models really are something special, and it's nice to see one so well painted. This Dark Angel is one of those military police type characters with the weird wiggly S on the shoulder pad. The winner of the mounted figures category was D. Nazer with his elf on horseback. I love the colours on this one. Again, it's blue. And it's painted really cleanly. The face has a lot of character, and again the base is tidy and not over the top. I'm not much of a fantasy fan, but I do appreciate this one. Good work. So it's the winners of the Dragons category next. There's no honourable mentions here, so we are jumping straight to third place. In third place was Graham Appley with his incredible big red dragon jumping off a rock. There's so much I like about this piece. The painting on the dragon, the way the red transitions to yellow on the edges of the scales, and the amazing clean freehand on both the shield and banner. And then it's the base. It looks really realistic to me. It has some choice details on it, and it's not just a big pile of rocks. It's fantastic. Second place went to B. Moore with his dragon slaying the Slayers. Good to see a dragon getting the upper hand for once. I love the flame effects coming out of his mouth. Again, the base is busy, but tidy. I can clearly see what's going on. In this case, it's some victims. I love it. The winner of the Dragons category was David Chauvel with his huge monster, the Plague Dragon. We can see an early Grim Reaper miniature riding on top of this one. Maybe that's Mortarion. When you bought this dragon, it was so big that you had to make your own wing skin. Is that the correct term for it? Some people used tinfoil, some used paper, but this one appears to use crepe paper. Remember that stuff from first school? It's a beautiful piece. Nice one, David. Okay, so next up we have the winner of the Monsters category. Exciting stuff. The honourable mention was given to Andy Thomas with his ogre. This is the ogre miniature with the nice haircut. I love the gold effects on the decorative elements. Are they shields? Also, the base is nice. We don't see many desert style bases, but it has some nice flowers and foliage too. Third place went to Mark Harrison with his tree. Isn't this brilliant? I love the little sign, "Thieves will be thumped." It's a bit like the Whomping Willow from Harry Potter, but this, I think, predates that by a few hundred years. Or that's what it feels like. Is this a genuine Citadel miniature? I don't think I've ever seen one before. I love everything about it. Wonderful. Second place went to David Chauvel with his ogre beastie looking thing. This one has a huge base. It's pretty much a diorama. The paintwork is very nice. What I really like, however, is the composition of elements on the base. The way that dead tree overhangs looks particularly good. Very effective and very nice. And first place went to David Soper. David's winning a few things here today at Golden Demon 1988. David has won with his troll. In the words of the bard, look at the verticality of that composition. Is he standing on his previous victims, or is he just throwing rocks? I love the bright colours of the skin against the neutral colours of the base. I also have a thing for these old skeleton miniatures. It's great. The Dark Future Cars category is up next, but what's weird is that I can find no honourable mentions in my research and no second or third place. If anyone can tell me who came second and third, I would really appreciate it. When doing my research, I didn't even see a Dark Future Car category in the entry sheets. Perhaps they added it on the day, and if someone knows, please let me know. So, with no known honourable mention, third or second, it's straight to the winner. The winner was Brian Gunter with his awesome little hot rod. The base car reminds me of those cute little Morgan cars. I love the weapons on this, a little machine gun on the cockpit and teeny weeny tiny fragile looking missiles on the front wings. I would even drive this one myself. Very nice. So the next category is the single figure conversion category. This should be a fun one. The honourable mention went to Adrian Sellers with his Fred Astaire themed Eldar Dreadnought. This one is pretty famous. I would argue people remember this one over the following winners of the same category. The actual face on that Dreadnought is really well painted. The cane and hat are what I assume to be scratch built. I do wonder how he made those. Extra marks for the pose too. Terrific. Okay, so third place went to M. Delicata with his dragon. This dragon looks like something I've seen in an early 90s cartoon movie, but I can't place it. Any ideas, anyone? It has a pair of old person's glasses on with the little rope things that prevent them from falling off your face. Whatever are they called? I don't think I've ever had to refer to them in my life before. I think the dragon's summoning some skeletons as they are coming out of the ground while he reads a scroll. Either that, or he's lost and looking at a map. Second place went to D. Nazer with his Minotaur. Mr. Nazer has also entered a fair few miniatures into this competition over various categories. This one has a really nicely painted banner depicting that satanic goat thing you see in movies. Is that something that's based on a real thing? There's no blood on the sword, which I think is a shame, however, but there are the little red mushrooms. Superb. The winner of the single figure conversion category was Paul Benson with what appears to be a 40k Ogryn conversion. There's a lot going on here. The Ogryn has a really nicely painted banner depicting a young lady. He has a fair few weapons attached to him that look like they could actually be some tools of some description. The base also has some nice decorative elements, and of course the Ogryn's face itself is clean and easily readable. Are the plants scratch built or shop bought, do you think? I like this one. The next category we are going to look at is the winners of the Standard Bearers category. There should be some nice art in this one. First up is an honourable mention. It's an Eldar Dreadnought of what I think to be the Alatok craft world. It has some lovely striped effects both on the head and the banner itself. I like the way the yellow transitions to a nice orange. Very smooth. I can see a hand coming out of the base. Maybe it's the Dreadnought's previous victim. All the metal debris reminds me of one of the future war scenes in the Terminator movies. Why on earth haven't we had a movie set in the future war yet? Genesis doesn't count, by the way. So in third place, we have R. Lenningham. This piece is what appears to be a two-headed orcs. Someone did tell me once that orcs can be very two-faced. He's carrying a strange bent sword dagger type thing that looks a little Aztec, or like the sword Meliodas has in the Seven Deadly Sins. I do enjoy that anime. Does anyone else? The banner itself is the Death Guard Legion logo by the looks of things. It's a skull inside a spiked halo. A coincidence? There's a couple of runes on there that I sadly can't decipher for you. I do apologise. Okay, so in second place we have D.P. Pearson with his dwarf. Now, I do love this banner, but I have never seen a dwarf army with this sigil or logo before. It's a pair of winged legs with a fist for a head, I think. It looks really funky and weird. I do, however, quite like it. There's some old Giga art that looks a bit like this in his sketchbook books. I think they were concept art for a movie that never got made. It also says Bugman's on the banner. Maybe this is an early Bugman's Brewery logo. Who knows? The winner of the Standard Bearer category was Hugh Bowles with his beautiful ogre troll thing. 10 internet cookies, if you can name that miniature. The banner is really nicely painted. It depicts an orc head, I think, with a little script. I think it says "No Heart Stepping." Is that a song by an old band by any chance? But not only is there this nicely painted banner, the guy riding the banner has his own banner. It's a little blue and oranged halved gurning face. It's really well done, I love this. Oh, and there's the mushrooms on the base again. We can't forget those. The next category we're going to check out is the winners for the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine Squads category. Yes, they got a category all of their own. Sadly, I couldn't find all the winners for this category, but I'll show you what I did find. The honourable mentions were unknown, but third place, however, went to Ross Nisbet with his Ultramarines. Even back at the dawn of 40k, Ultramarines appear to be popping up everywhere. I would have expected most of the Marines to be from the plastic RTB01 set, but these appear to be all the metal figures. I bet that cost him some fuel on the way up. Maybe he brought them on a trailer. I love the weight of metal miniatures, they feel really good. Looking at the basing, it looks like Russ sprinkled on some texture but never actually painted it. Either that, or he's painted it too realistically for me to tell the difference. I do like the Marine with only one armoured arm. Is that because it was damaged, or was it a Space Marine fashion choice? Sadly, we don't have any information as to who came second. Again, if anyone out there knows, then please let me know. So the winner of the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine squad was N. Turner. I don't know what chapter Mr. Turner has painted, so I'm going to assume they are some sort of homebrew chapter. The logo on the shoulder pads is pretty much the Lamenter's logo, but obviously these Marines are not yellow, so I doubt it's them. Unless they've sat out in the sun too long and bleached their armour, I guess. One of the Marines has a nice pair of ruby red slippers on. I wonder if they let him make wishes. Originally, I thought the Marine on the far right was holding a brick, ready to throw through a local shopkeeper's window or something. But on closer inspection, I think it's a magazine in a pouch. Again, the studs are not painted in a metallic metal. They are coloured, and in this instance, they are red. It's strange seeing coloured shoulder studs after years of seeing them painted as various metals. I really like it. Our next category is the winners of the Warhammer 40,000 Vignettes category, or 40k dioramas for us low gothic scum. There's 2 honourable mentions, so let's start with the first. Firstly, we have David Chauvel, again with his Ogryn taking on a trio of Eldar. I do love the striped trousers on the Ogryn. He kinda reminds me of a chef. Maybe he was the regiment's cook. You don't see much of this Ogryn miniature anymore. It is a nice one. The second honourable mention went to J.S. Wydern. This diorama depicts a dreadnought being worked on by a tech priest. I'm not sure if the guy in the top is actually the pilot or someone checking out the gubbins inside. I'm pretty sure back in the Rogue Trader era, the dreadnought suit was actually wearable, rather than being a life support device, so it's possible it is the pilot. I do enjoy all the little details around the room. It's very characterful. So third place went to Ivan Bartlett. Are you noticing all these repeated names yet? With his orcs in the rubble. Do you think the orcs are aware there's an Imperial Army member looking down at them? It looks a bit like the shower scene in the movie The Rock. I do like that movie. Amusingly, the piece of wall at the top right reminds me of the big plush mallets from Whack-A-Day. Timmy Mallet, remember him? That would have been around then, right? Mallet's Mallet indeed. Second place went to Paul Benson with his Harlequin walkers. These are very nicely painted indeed. There's an interesting face painted on the dreadnought, and both walkers have really well done patterning on the legs. I have a feeling the diamond pattern is known as lozenges in heraldic circumstances. Either that or I dreamt it. There's also a really nice banner and a blistering piece of statue as basing rubble. It's lovely. Okay, so now we have the first place in the 40k vignette category. Sadly, I do not know who the artist was. Again, if anyone does know, then please let us all know. This is a Marines Errant attack bike. Or is it Nova Marines? There's a lot going on here that I like. Both driver and passenger are looking off into the distance telling a story. The green flames on the bike are really nicely painted, and of course, the little mushrooms on the base. There's a helmet on a post, which looks a bit like a World War II German army helmet. Perhaps that's from an Imperial Guard miniature. Sorry, Imperial Army. There's a brand name on the bike tyre, but sadly, with my old man's eyesight, I can't quite make it out. Okay, so here's a fun one. It's the winners of the Scratch-Built Vehicles category. No honourable mentions, so straight in to third place. Third place was R. Koenig with his stack of Rhino vehicles vehicle. This is a fun one. There looks to be 6 Rhino kits used here, 4 for the bottom and 2 stuck together to make a long piece on the top. Interestingly, this would have only cost you around £20 to £30 to create when released. Imagine making it now. It would cost a small fortune. The Marines on the Rhino look to be from the Blood Drinkers chapter. One of my favourite chapters from early 40k. I do like that huge pintle-mounted weapon. Can anyone identify it? Second place went to Markham Eggleston with his vehicle. I'm sure many of you have seen this one before, it's quite a famous piece. The vehicle itself is really nice. It's built in a manner that's believable and also painted very well. The base really sets it off though. There's so much going on, yet doesn't look overly busy. There's signposts dotted about, debris, rusty boxes, and a marine. It's really nice. I would recommend giving those little bits of script a read. It's very amusing and again very 80s. The winner of the scratch-built vehicles category was Guy Carpenter with his Rhino conversion. Guy has converted this Rhino into a recovery vehicle named Rhino Mark III Recovery Vehicle, the RV. Not recreational vehicle, obviously. Well, unless you enjoy the battles. That would be a name fitting for the orcs. I love the painting on this one. It really reminds me of Byron's stippled or dry-brushed vehicles from the Artis Opus YouTube channel. It's got so much contrast that's also very smooth at the same time. It has that nice texture that's really hard to describe. The numerical decals and hazard stripes really add to the piece. I think this is brilliant. Well done, Guy. So the next category we're going to take a look at the winners of is the Fantasy Vignette category. Again, fantasy dioramas to all of us commoners. The honourable mention went to Mick Beard with his fishing goblins that have managed to snag a dragon. The title of the piece is Oops. Oops indeed. I'm not sure that dragon will be best pleased about being woken up by a hook through his nose. Those goblins better do a runner. Sadly, they don't look to be taking my advice, as one has his net out to land the beast. I'm not convinced it's big enough. Third place went to R. Bancroft with his vignette. It depicts a dwarf creeping up on an orc to slay him. I love the name of this piece. On Tiptoe. The piece tells a clear story, and it's obvious why it did so well. Who do you think came off better from this little showdown? Guesses in the comments below, but I'm not sure there's an actual answer by the way. Second place went to Ian Seymour with his fantasy vignette depicting a lot of colourful entities. So it would appear there's a dwarf on a bridge about to have another showdown with a couple of trolls. One of the trolls looks like it's about to launch a rock at the dwarf. I'm pretty sure it'd be game over for him if that connected. I love all the colour in this piece. Even the mud around the edges has some colour added. The reeds in the river are really well made, and I'm going to assume they are brush bristles or something. There's also some water effects in the little stream that look nicely done. Good work, Mr. Seymour. Now, drum roll please. First place and overall winner of the Slayer Sword went to Ivan Bartlett with his massive elephant. Actually, I think it's a mammoth. This whole piece is really well done. I especially like all the building that went into the howdah. Is that the right name? Howdah? No idea. It reminds me of one of the Haradrim Mumaks from Return of the King. I don't recognise the faction of the riders. Are they some sort of barbarians? The fur on the mammoth itself I think has been sculpted and is also very well painted. The base of this piece is also nicely done. The grassy foliage looks quite realistic and there's a few nice details dotted about. A spear that appears to have been thrown at the mammoth and missed, a metal pot, and some more reeds. It seems reeds were a fun addition back then too. There's some fun touches around the rim of the base. It looks a bit like a piece of costume jewellery. A converted crown, perhaps. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ivan went on to create. Well done, Ivan, and congratulations. Congratulations to all the winners. So there you have it. Golden Demon 1988. What did you think of Golden Demon 1988? Did you enter Golden Demon 1988? What was your favourite category you just saw in Golden Demon 88? What do you think was the best miniature in Golden Demon 88? Do you think the standard of painting has improved over the years since these original Golden Demons? Have you ever entered Golden Demon? If so, what did you enter with? Let us know in the comments below. I'd have to say my favourite category all the way back to when I was a youngster, we used to read White Dwarf, was the scratch-built vehicle category, as it always had lots of weird and wonderful vehicles that captured the imagination. Not so much nowadays, you don't see as many of these scratch-built videos, and as well you shouldn't, because Games Workshop produce a multitude of kits, so you don't need to use your imagination as much anymore, sadly. I remember the days when you could make a vehicle or a grav-attack tank out of a deodorant stick. That's something we're going to be tackling another day. Now, the Dark Future entry was very strange. I did lots of research for this video, and we had a look at all the categories you could enter to, and nowhere did I find the option of entering into a Dark Future Cars category. However, there were winners in the Dark Future Cars category, so I'm going to guess that maybe they came up with it on the day or something, or there's something I've missed somewhere. If you know, then please let me know in the comments below. Also, there were a few missing entries in there. First that comes to mind was the Space Marine squads and a couple of the Dark Future cars. If you are aware of any of those winners and entrants that are missing, then again, please let us know ASAP in the comments below, and we'll update the description with those. So anyway, one day we'll enter Golden Demon ourselves, and hopefully we shall see you there. I look forward to meeting you and discussing our badly painted entries, and wondering maybe if we can bribe the judges just to get a finalist pin. If you enjoy the content here, then please consider joining the Patreon, the link to which is in the description below. And as in the words of the bards, joining the Patreon is worth more to me than 10 legions of Sadokar. If you want to see some more old Gulmer, sounds like someone from Deep Space Nine, Gulder Cat's brother perhaps. If you want to see some more Golden Demon videos, and I know you do, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. As always, thank you very much for watching, and always remember to drill your barrels, especially if you're entering Golden Demon. And those mould lines, don't forget those.